Hi, my name is Robert Schrader. I am the Agile office lead here at the mRNA Center of Excellence within this vaccine R&D group here at Sanofi. My team and I are tasked with the Scrum and Scrum at Scale rollout, which involves both training and coaching to enable our teams to work in a more coordinated and effective way, aligning strategy to the execution. How we monitor and understand and focus our energies with our Scrum deployment is critical to our mission success. And I'd like to share with you how we are going about doing that, at least trying to. First of all, who are we? The mRNA Center of Excellence is a global team of 500 plus employees where we are going from development to research and development, but where our goal is to provide and create a sustainable mRNA platform as well as generate new viable vaccine candidates complementing our already uh, existing vaccine and therapeutic approaches. Our primary hubs are operation in the United States and in France, but we also have recently added a group in Australia. This vaccine portfolio that we're trying to support and build is in part and we generate in probably around $7 billion annually just on the vaccine portfolio. And we're trying to supplement and build and innovate on that platform so we can get our patients the critical vaccines and therapeutics that they need. The mRNA Center of Excellence, as we call it, COE, um, came into existence around mid to 2021, and in that time has grown tremendously. We have again over 500 people, but that during that span, it grew 20% year on year. So year over year. So when you look at our projects, our portfolios, our teams were constantly changing and very challenging to control, understand, and get some continuity. So what we want to do is we wanted to ensure that we could better understand and ensure our success in our mission to deliver these critical therapies and vaccines. But we need to make sure that we're managing not just our focus, but our teams to organize ourselves in a consistent way that allows us to be successful in our endeavors. We chose Scrum and Scrum at Scale as our approaches to do this. Just a quick overview of what we're looking at. We have essentially two different environments that we wanted to kind of focus on. We have our platform team, which is focused or tasked with creating a sustainable platform for which we can then use with our various vaccine, infectious disease targets, or other therapeutic areas. And we need to have a connection with those targets, which is our vaccine project X. I won't give you the names, but the point is that we have a number of different options that we want to investigate with these different platforms. And we need to be able to not just focus on improvement of that platform, but also how can we insert that into our ongoing portfolios and projects. And again, just to kind of give you the idea that this is a cartoon of the environment in Scrum at Scale, but over 50 teams in total we're trying to coordinate at different levels. And it became quite a bit ordeal for us to do it. So how we took the basic approach? Well, we're trying to learn Scrum. Let's leverage the Scrum framework as our way to assess. Now, as you can see, we have the roles, events, criteria, artifacts, some metrics around what we're trying to execute, and we have a scale 1 to 5, 1 being missing or not used, 5 being a role model, practice, or team or role. And that seemed like a very good idea. And we use very common spreadsheets. Some actually were available from colleagues in Scrum Inc. or other organizations. And it was very easy to operate, capture, and basically earmark our team's progress relative to the 353 of Scrum. But that became a lot of data. When you talk about 50 plus teams over multiple time points, that became a lot of information that we now had to curate, organize, control, but we also want to be able to dive into the information, get some visualization so we can see trending. We can understand and identify very quickly where are the areas of improvement, where are the areas that we're actually doing quite well. So we needed something more. We need something more streamlined that allowed us to not spend so much time managing the data and information, but do more analysis so we could focus and improve our coaching, training, and our team interactions. So we took a step back and said, okay, let's start developing our context, and we need something centralized. We need to make sure that we can, focus on our goals. We need to make sure that our agile practices are being captured, that and we can collaboratively assess and advance nimble manners by tools. We want to make sure that we're capturing in the right framework what we're trying to do. But we had some key questions that we want to ask as well. How might we continuously monitor, right, and assess on a common set of language, right? Is the consistency of how we're capturing it something that we could maintain within our center of excellence, but not just center of excellence, but beyond our boundaries and into the rest of R&D and beyond. I would say that this would be a platform that we would be able to maybe apply or with any Scrum team or environment across my organization, which is 100,000 plus strong. So with that better understanding and focus, we then now can, by looking at what the next steps, what did that look like? Well, by developing this centralized data application allowed us now to streamline the reporting. We come to one spot, not many, right? Because we have constant language, it became much easier to interpret one coach from another coach and make sure that was a little closer to what the reality is. There wasn't as much subjectivity, it was more objective. And with the consistent language, we're talking the same vocabulary. So that became much more normalized and consistent in our approach. So with this framework, we engage a developer, and she said that, "Well, I can take that spreadsheet and make an application." So she did. And so what we would do with not just with the data curation, we wanted to make sure that we are having an overview and be able to capture, explain what we're trying to do, but also visualize the overall health of organization. We can evaluate individual teams. We have some radar plots, which I'll go into the next slide, that shows the very specific elements of Scrum and how well we're doing accordingly. We want to be able to look at this over time. How are teams getting better? Are they getting worse? Are they not making any progress once together? Let's represent this, not just within the teams, but across teams. And then we want to look at overall team information that allows us to say, okay, are there teams that are performing stronger in certain areas? That gives us an ability to kind of dive into why. All right, why are teams being more perfect? Maybe they're missing a scrum master. Maybe the product owner needs more training, or maybe the team members just aren't engaged. But this allows us to focus more specifically on those areas. And as coaches, as teams, we can address and overcome these challenges. So just to take a snapshot of a specific view, my favorite view is obviously the not obvious, but the radar plot, which allows us to look across the different elements of Scrum 353 and allows us to now monitor independently, but see the peaks and valleys of the performance, which allows us to understand where the common successes are. Where are we doing well? Okay, and then obviously the valleys that we're observing, that allows us to see more specifically areas where we need to improvement. But again, this becomes a much more objective conversation with the teams, with the scrum master, with the team members, developers, and the product owner. So we can say, this is where we need to improve. Perhaps this is where we want to introduce our Kaizen at our retrospectives and give a much more of a focus. Again, that's our micro view. But we also want to be able to look at across teams. There may be some elements that we want to improve that we're doing well, if not just as teams, even coaches. Maybe our teaching methodology, our way that we're engaging with our teams isn't effective. But this may give us an indication of where we're falling short so we can then address them. And if we take a step back, now this allowed us now to communicate with our managers and stakeholders and leadership on where we're making successes. So we can say that, okay, we can focus our energies on various teams. Again, the projects here are just generically A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. But allows us to now look at our engagements, understand our relative maturity, and then over time, as you can see, 10.1, 10.1, 10.0, 10.1, did we make any progress in those areas? Again, also with an understanding that we're continually increasing our footprint of teams, it becomes a much more manageable data set that we can now pull out some visualization and understanding that we can now focus energies, but also engage with leadership or managers to help us progress this more forward. So this is very early in our process, but so far it's been done a very good job at capturing what may have taken weeks to put together in a matter of seconds by simply updating the information in data set. So what have we learned? Again, gathering this data in a more organized, rational manner just makes sense, right? It makes sense that allows us to kind of be consistent. And with that consistency, allows us to reduce the amount of waste. The common set of questions allows us to kind of frame it in a more normalized way. The coaches' time for data creation is dramatically reduced. They don't have to spend lots of time managing one or more spreadsheets. Again, we have 50 plus teams in our ecosystem. We span that, spanning every year, every month, actually. But again, critically, seeing the data in a visual way that's meaningful is powerful. All right. Where it allows us to speak with the data in objective ways, saying these are the areas that we're doing well, these are the areas that we need improvement, and then we can have a much more clear path forward on what we need to address, either internally as coaches in teams, but also leadership and what their contributions are. However, I think that having a simple 3-5-3 criteria was still a little subjective. Like Scrum Master 1 to 5, you're a 3. How do you get to be a 5? That became a very difficult conversation to have without some more objectivity in the process. So we wanted to be able to drill into a little more detail, not just to get better data, but to be able to provide a more disciplined approach for our advice for our various roles and teams to actually allow them to get better and better and better. So we needed to upgrade and create a version 2 of this maturity assessment tool. So what we've gone about doing is create a little more granularity on, and we'll just focus on Scrum Masters here or any roles, but give us some more ideal and prioritize behaviors that we want our various roles, events, and artifacts to capture, right? As a Scrum Master, we need to make sure that you're facilitating the events effectively. We want to make sure that you're coaching more effectively. We want to make sure that the impediment removal is something that is front and foremost in your operating and priorities. So the idea here is that we want to be able to grade on those more specific granular elements, grade them independently, but then have a weighted score that allows us to have the overall health. But then, because we had that level of granularity understanding, we can now direct our coaching and our instructions in a much more precise way. So, this is the intention. Again, the idea here is that we're going to be by the end of Q1, which is in a few weeks, that we'll have this rolled out. But the hope is that with that more robust data set, we'll be able to then guide and develop our teams in a more objective way, in a smart way, so we can move forward and really build on our experience and our success to date. I want to thank you all for your time. And if any questions, I'm sure we can find it, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.